Right.
Yeah, and we just had some regrets because some of the folks are like, I can't join, sorry. No worries. But no, I love it. Intimate, and this is like our own little wellness session. It's even better.
Exactly.
I
Exactly.
love
That
small
sounds good.
groups.
And you guys probably need it after this week.
Oh,
Even if things
totally.
are positive, even though it sounds like it's great, it's a lot. So why don't I tell you guys a bit about who I am? Because some of you I've met and some of you I haven't. My name is Allison. I've even got my name printed on my little Hollywood square. I'm in Toronto today, and I'm a psychiatrist, which that sometimes makes people want to turn off their computers. But that's sort of my official title. But actually, what I really like to do is more community-based work. So I do a lot of work in Nunavut, and through that have really discovered that sitting in a clinic as a psychiatrist can be pretty limited, that it's really like in the community, getting to know people, learning about their unique strengths and culture. In Nunavut, obviously that's Inuit. That has given me a lot of meaning in my work, and working with the Arctic Council, working on the project that you guys have all seen, Project Creates, has been very meaningful to me. So when I talk about bringing wellness, I definitely don't feel like I have all the answers. We have certain kind of tools that we use in psychiatry, but I find sources of wellness in many other places. My own team yesterday, we did a wellness afternoon. I brought in someone I know who does mindfulness. He does very cool mindfulness, and it was amazing. Our whole team was like, "Oh, we needed that. We didn't even know we needed that." So I'm very open to the idea of wellness from all different kinds of traditions, not just medicine. So that's a little bit about me, and I'm still very connected to Nunavut. I still organize the mental health program for the territory. My sons are Inuit, but we do live in Toronto right now, and that's some of my connections. So maybe we can all do intros. You guys all know each other though, don't you? You guys, does everyone on this call otherwise know each other? Oh no,
Not everybody.
oh, okay, that's good. Do you want to go first, Alyssa?
Sure. Everybody knows me on here. I think the one youth, yeah. My name's Alyssa. Yeah, born and raised in the Western Arctic, Inuit, Gwich'in Dene, with the other Steph. I'm a mom. I have a really great and supportive partner. I'm going to be doing my master's in the fall, master's of social work on trauma, Indigenous trauma and resiliency at U of T.
You are?
Yeah, I got in.
What?
Yeah.
That's
So I found
amazing.
out last week. It was,
Congratulations.
thank you.
Wow.
Very excited. And yeah, project director of WAYC. Very passionate about mental wellness as well. It's so much more than what I think a lot of folks frame it as. So yeah, just adding more tools, more knowledge, informal spaces like this I love. And I'm lucky to have a lot of friends here with me in this. So this is like a time for us. I'm so grateful. That's me. I'm gonna pass it off. Ashley.
Hi, everyone. My name is Ashley O'Krennick. I'm from Fort Simpson, Northwest Territories, but I recently, about 3 years ago, moved to Inuvik in the Northwest Territories as well. So I don't know where to start. I'm a little tired. We had a election last night, and they didn't post the results. And so I stayed up really late waiting for it, and then I fell asleep. But so I'm waking up slowly, but I'm here and I'm excited. I work for Aurora College. I plan life and wellness events for the students at the college. I support the Western Arctic Youth Collective in their programming as a facilitator. I engage as a participant. I take a lot of opportunities to grow in all aspects of my life, but I focus on culture and youth programming when I do that, and just an active community member in advocacy and things like that. So yeah, really nice to be here. I'm excited for the conversation. Thank you.
So nice to meet you, Ashley. You get to pass it to someone.
Okay, we'll go next on my screen is JC.
I could talk, just heading out. I'm JC. Van Queensy, good morning, everyone. Project coordinator for WAYC, alumni of the Project Creates. And I do language activism on social media, hashtag speak Gwich'in to me. University student, proud Gwich'in woman living in Inuvik, where I'm born and raised, and happy to tune in, Masi.
You get to pass it, JC.
I'll pass it to Vanessa.
Hi, I'm Vanessa. I am technically living in Dawson City, Yukon. I'm currently down in BC for some family things. Yeah, and I'm from the Nakasley First Nation in Fort St. James, BC. I work with Alyssa on another project called CBYF, Communities Building Youth Futures, in Whitehorse, and I'm really excited to be here and get to meet all you guys and see what you guys are up to. So thank you for having me. I will pass it on to Devlin.
Sometimes the hardest thing is to find the unmute button where it is on the screen. Good morning, everyone. I'm Devlin. I work for Gwich'in Council International, which is a nonprofit serving a board of Gwich'in based in Alaska, Yukon, and the Northwest Territories. And we sit at the Arctic Council. And so I generally get the privilege of I get the privilege of seeing what happens at the Arctic Council and then figuring out what and how we can bring some of those things into Gwich'in communities and support Gwich'in voices back up to the Arctic Council. So this really cool facilitator role. And yeah, it's my pleasure to sort of have WAYC is hosting these events this week, and I'm listening in so that I can learn from them and learn what people have to say and see how I take it into our work. Thanks for having me.
You've been so supportive, Devlin.
It makes my heart sing. So actually, I grew up in Toronto. I'll tell you a really quick story. I grew up in Toronto, and when I was going to high school, there was this organization called the Ontario Secondary School Students Association. We called it like the OSSSA. And Alyssa's nodding her head, but probably no one else has heard of it. But they, at the time I was going to school, yeah, they were super powerful and used to do student-run leadership conferences, like 12 a year in different regions in Ontario. And they were like, you could go to a conference as a student. They were overnight. We took over high schools. The parents all stayed in like the staff room to be chaperones, but all the students would do this like peer-to-peer training on like conflict resolution and interpersonal skills and trust building and all these things. And once you'd gone to a conference, you could become a leadership developer at another conference. So it was sort of this whole like very sort of train the trainer model of high school students going all throughout the province. And once you had gone to a conference in your home little region, you could go to another region and do it. So I sort of was like, had my eyes open, like super, the first conference I went to, I was like, wow, like youth can do these things. Like they can run this whole like 4-day incredible like youth run event, bringing like food and entertainment and speakers, but mostly just this like space for us to talk about what was important to us. And that triggered my mind really early on, this like power of youth. And although like I guess I can't probably consider myself a youth anymore, I hold all of that because I think that when even if people are telling us no, or people are saying to youth like, oh yeah, you can't run something like that, those are such artificial boundaries that I have seen blown out of the water so many times. So if I can add my voice to helping break down some of those boundaries and barriers, or helping mentor or empower or share like leadership development manuals or whatever it is with people who are thinking about doing the same thing, and then get out of the way so that they can do it, that just like bursts my heart. So I will pass it to Charla now, who I have the pleasure of seeing on here.
Masi Devlin, Bangwinzi, everyone. Charla Greenland Valji. Good morning. My name is Charla Greenland. Very honored to be here. Like Devlin was just saying, well, I should say, I just want to thank Devlin for being such a great part of the GCI team. I'm a board member on GCI, and that's how Devlin and I know each other. And then of course, Alyssa, it's just a pleasure to work with her, and I'm just amazed and proud of the whole WAYC team. So a little bit about me. I'm a Gwich'in from Aklavik, Eddie Tet Gwich'in on my dad's side, Van Tet Gwich'in on my mom's, and some settler ancestry as well in there, but very much identify with my Gwich'in identity. My wellness and passion is really founded upon my cultural values and practices. I come from a very large family. I'm the youngest of 10 girls and lots of nieces and nephews. I recently moved to Yellowknife, so I had the privilege of being back here as a GCI member, as a support from GNWT. So it's really great to be home because this is where where my heart is. And so I'm just really glad to be here. I've been an educator for the past 10 years here at East Tree Secondary School, and was a junior high and high school teacher, and then eventually led into counseling because I know the value of relationship, and I guess, being here and seeing the amazing work that all of the youth are doing just really feels like all of the pieces that I've been working towards are falling into place. And it's just wonderful to see how barriers are being broken down. And, yesterday especially was a very powerful day with the town hall, the reverse town hall, I believe that's what it was called. And I'm just really glad to be a part of this. My mind has been really I don't know, like with my current job right now, there's a lot of areas for growth. So I think it's just really cool that all of these great people on the screen and at the complex, we're being able to connect, and hopefully that just keeps growing into bigger things that our community so much needs. So I feel like I'm rambling. Good morning, everyone, and I'm looking forward to today.
Not at all. It was so great to hear, and really interesting to hear how people are coming to this and experiences that you bring. And yes, I can see people in the complex there. Hi, we're going to give you a big wave from over here. I don't know if we'll be able to hear from people that are there, Alyssa. Is that probably not technically?
The only way is if they go up to the laptop, really.
Okay.
That's set up.
Maybe
If they really want to, they can.
You guys feel free, if you want, well, feel free to come and
Doing
say
it right
hi
now.
to us. So awesome to have you there.
Who's that? That's Bobby, there's Holly, and I don't know who the other folks are. I can't tell.
Hello.
So So
I can't see it.
we're not going to be able to see us because we're projecting. Anyways, I think probably
We can hear you.
okay, good. Probably the best way to like keep this going would be if everybody could like write questions down or tell me questions and I could put them in the chat.
Yeah.
Then we don't have to shout.
Oh, great idea.
Is that okay?
Improvise. We do what you can. Thanks, team.
Okay, thank you.
You guys are awesome. We know you're there, and yeah, definitely put any questions in the chat. So then why don't, because you guys were coming to this thinking, it was very clear it was about wellness. Why don't I share a couple of slides and try to keep it brief, but just think maybe it'll help frame the rest of the conversation and we can all kind of share our own approach to wellness. How does that sound? And then Alyssa also has some activities for us. So I want to make sure we get to do those. Okay. And Alyssa, I don't know if I had a chance to share. I have done some work in body mapping too. So that's pretty cool. Yay. All right, let me get the slides up. And here we go. Whoops, can you guys see that? Awesome. Coping during COVID, what a topic. Actually, it's one of the things that's incredible are all the adaptations that people have made. Like, who would have thought we'd all be connecting virtually, including, the group sitting there in the center, and you guys have got your masks on, and it's been quite a time. I really like this graph. I won't show you too many graphs, but if you actually look closely, this graph tells a story. And along the bottom line, because we love graphs in medicine, is a timeline and thinking through the different phases of what we've been through in COVID. So before pre-disaster, I love how this is from the US, from SAMHSA, which is the mental health and substance use kind of federal group in the US. And so pre-disaster, we're all kind of going along, and then COVID hits, and you probably all recognize this phase, the first phase of the heroic phase. All right, well, I can, and you guys all seem like the type, right? You get in there, you organize, we can do this, we can hand out masks, we can, talk to our community members, and that actually can really pump people up. But then for many of us, and none of our stories are the same, but the idea that we can also not see it coming, but really hit some pretty hard times. There's so many reasons for that. Isolation, loss of activities that we're looking forward to, maybe grief, maybe loss, whether it's directly to COVID, or many people I know have had losses during this time and we can't grieve the same, we can't connect with people in the same way. So there's this kind of like valley of disillusionment, then up and down for people. And now we can finally see the light, I think. We've developed measures and means to deal with the pandemic. People are starting to get vaccinated, but it's also been going on way longer than any of us. Like if we had said 2 years ago, oh, we're going to go through this time and it's going to last for a year, maybe a year and a half, where we're all isolated and in our families and you can't really do all the things you used to do. Like we would have been like, no, it's pretty profound what's happened. And I think just acknowledging that is important. So the hospital I work at is a national mental health hospital. And the hospital has put out this national survey. Thousands of people have now filled it out. And it's found exactly what you would think. Don't even worry about the graphs. But basically, 1 in 4 people, and other researchers have found this also, 1 in 4 people is encountering pretty significant distress during this time. And that is high. Anxiety, loneliness, feelings of depression, and a lot of alcohol consumption as well has gone up. So we know that distress is out there. I had to throw up at least one paper This is something that just came out. I love the title, Mostly Worse, Occasionally Better. So looking at youth and their mental wellness. Initially, there was a thought in the first wave of the pandemic that a lot of youth were doing better because the stress was off a little bit. Lots of relaxing of school and other social conditions that can cause stress for some people. But now the finding is that mostly people are doing worse than they were doing before the pandemic. So intense, especially if people had pre-existing anxiety or depression or social challenges or bullying, all of those things seem to be worse. And I'll just shift a bit. So what can we do about it? And I really love this idea of patterns of stress, because stress is not all bad. Stress actually helps us to develop resilience, but that is when we can make that. So you see the green dotted line on the bottom, and I'll show you another picture in a second. The more we can shift our stress to what is predictable, moderate, and controllable, the more that stress can lead to resilience. And resilience is a funny word. You know, maybe you guys have heard or had conversations about this, that resilience kind of has a little bit of a negative tinge too, because we all know that in conditions of adversity or in community contexts where people don't have enough resources, for example, or they struggle just to meet the daily needs they have, resilience is a bit of a bad word because it implies that people should just tough it out. So let's acknowledge that, but also talk about, you know, how we can individually and then in our families and communities develop resilience. So we need to keep all those different layers in mind. But the more our stress is unpredictable, extreme, and prolonged, we become vulnerable and our resilience is worn away. So all of the things that I'm going to touch on, and then I want to hear what you guys are doing, have to do with shifting our stress to what's more predictable. And this will provide another way of looking at that. So again, if people don't have structure, if they're coping in ways that are not healthy, so not being physically active, eating too much, really isolating themselves, have disrupted sleep, have their thoughts going on in a negative way. And to this, I would also add some of those social stresses. If people are struggling with poverty or living in environments where they're experiencing violence, for example, all of those things push the stress in a way that can really impact us. And we know that this has lifelong impacts. If people grow up with chronic and uncontrolled stress, that's very hard on every aspect, not just our mental health, but our physical health and well-being. So what can we do to shift toward things, to make things more controllable? It's not actually rocket science. I think there are different ways in. And this is where I love how you actually, almost all of you talked about culture as a source of strength and community. And I think there are ways within that to achieve that, to help with that sense of safety, security, familiarity, strength, resourcefulness, and keeping ourselves regulated. So sleeping, moving, and eating properly, they really do give us a foundation to do all the other social things. And I think being connected to other people. If I had to and I'm not always good at keeping those things going either, but I definitely notice the thing for me that goes is sleep. You know, if I just have to get that one more thing done, and then all of a sudden I'm up till like 2 or 3 in the morning and feeling it the next day, and it really wears away at me. So that what we know from, and this is more from the medical box of things that we know are helpful, the C's. So control are all of those things that I talked about. What are the things that are within your control that you can focus on to create that move stress in a more predictable way? And that's been shown to be very helpful to mental wellness. Coherence has to do with what is the meaning you make out of this? What is the story? That's why I'm so interested in storytelling. What is the story that we tell ourselves about where we find ourselves right now. How do we make meaning out of it? And this, I think, is also where culture and community and family are so important, because how do we connect with the people around us to make meaning out of our experience? How do we share that meaning? And that relates very much to connectedness. How do we stay connected, even virtually? And how do we stay connected when people are also struggling? And those things all have evidence, and they're all part of communities that thrive, do a lot of these things, I think, naturally, and know the best ways for themselves to do these things. So I just have a couple more slides. And this is my little early on in the, so these things all also have sort of evidence of helping with mental wellness, but you'll see they're all part of what I've already said. So you remember that phrase, flattening the curve? Well, we were like, well, how can we flatten the curve of distress? And pulse checks have to do with, so again, another medical metaphor, but don't wait to go to a spa for a week or go, on the land for a week. These are things that we should be doing like throughout the day, kind of checking in with ourselves, developing protective routines, getting a little bit of activity, stopping and naming how we feel. Mental set, again, has to do with that coherence. How are we making sense of this? What is the story we're telling ourselves about this time? And reaching out to other people. And the other one I haven't talked about yet is limiting exposure. So we all know now that social media and news both can be as harmful as they are helpful. And, the more times we check, the more we stay checked in, the more that can also wear away at our resilience. And this is what I was actually hoping that Lisa Richardson could come today and speak with you, but they are, the whole team, the Center for Wise Practices in Toronto at Women's College Hospital. I do a lot of work with them. And they are an Indigenous team, medical and wellness, well-being team. There are no Inuit on the team, but First Nations, Dene, Métis, and what they did early on in the pandemic, they're all in the north right now helping with vaccinations. But early on, they got together and they came up with this idea of, so it's based on the medicine wheel, which may or may not apply to everybody or appeal to everybody. But what I think is so important about it is thinking, so I talked about the body, and we all know our like personal protective equipment and hand sanitizing, but also, sleep and nutrition and all those things are important. The mind, so coherence, thinking about the meaning we're making of things, the way that connects us to spirit, to heart, to our social connections, and spirit, like where is our spirit in all of this? And the integration. So coping, if you think about it in this way, has to do with the integration of all of those aspects. And they've just done some incredible work. And I think this is an invitation, not to say that there's one tradition that would apply to everyone, but an invitation to think about people's own traditions and own ways of coping and community and resilience in how we manage this time together. So I will stop there. And Alyssa, I don't know if you want to have any discussion first or if you want to move into the wellness activities that you brought. Oh, we can't hear your lovely voice.
Yeah, no, that was really good. I think I can't believe it's been a year. That's the one thing I'm just like thinking about. Yeah, I had a few conversations with a few people this week and they're like, oh my God, it's been a year. And for us, like we launched during like the first 2 weeks of COVID too, really. Well, we tried to, but then I was like, oh, okay, can't do that. But no, I think coping is something, when I talk to young people in a lot of the communities that I serve, coping, like relating to like that resilience, that strength you have, and that we cope in the best way that we can. And this is where those really interesting conversations come and reflections from young people, is when we start talking about coping and unpacking that and encourage them to kind of explore that for themselves. That's where they ask things like, so you're saying addictions is coping instead of other harmful activities? And that's something, because sometimes, like, say, for trigger warning folks, some youth have opened up being like, I harm myself, like I physically harm myself. So they're like, me coping, that's still saying I'm resilient. It doesn't mean I'm taking my life. I haven't done that. It comes up a lot in communities, especially when we're there a little bit longer than like a day, around coping. Because I think coping, like, I think you echoed on it slightly of just like, it's more than like those bubble baths and wine. That's what I always see with the memes. Like, coping to me is so much more, and it's something I've learned to accept from my upbringing, even, where I grew up with addictions around me in my environment, excessively. And that was completely normalized. Like, people drinking first thing in the morning was completely normalized. And it still is for some extended family. And them not having the basic needs in their home, and how they've coped. So then me unpacking all that, I was like, they were probably doing the best that they probably could sometimes, and not understanding why they were doing that and what those lean behaviors looked like for them. So there's a lot of things that I think when I talk about coping, especially with Indigenous youth and communities, is it allows them to say things like that out loud, because we have our own like coping of this, like, do this for you, like, but it's also just like the basic things like what you talked about. It's making sure you're getting sleep. It's making sure you're hydrated. It's making sure you were eating. I even had a conversation with someone being like, why are you waiting till 7 o'clock when you've worked all day to eat a meal? I know you're busy, but you need to stop. You can't just drink tea and coffee all day and survive and function. So it's just like saying that and encouraging and normalizing that, and to ask for help when you're ready to, I think, is when I shift it. When I hear things like that, is know that there are people who encourage you to find better forms of help to help with the coping. So you're not in like a healthy coping phase. Instead, you're more in a healthier coping phase. So those are things that we do with younger youth, because it opens up very quickly, because not many people make space in communities to talk about it. And Allison, you didn't see the panel yesterday, but I need to forward it to you. Those youth echoed so many things that I think should be a wake-up call for like our current government in the NWT, because they were saying, I don't want the counselors in my school. And that's what right now, when our current MLA in the Northwest Territories was like, we don't have a mental health crisis. She's like, we have counselors. Like, that was her first response for young people. We have counselors in the school. All those youth, and I would echo this too, I don't want a counselor in the school either. It makes me very uncomfortable, because in a counseling setting, I want to be able to open up in the way that I need to, but also I think counseling needs to be talked about a little bit more, because I don't think people know, I'm going to frame this wrong, but I don't think people a lot know how to do a counseling session, because I think a lot of people think it's like a couple and I'm good. Where I'm like, it took me probably 10 years to actually be able to participate in counseling the way it's intended. And there's a lot of reasons for that. There's a lot of just like being comfortable or understanding like, okay, I need to start talking about this kind of stuff. Or if I want to be in a better place, I need to open up a little bit more. And I need to trust that this person will hear me, and not judge me. Like, I always would carry those, like, just you talking to yourself of like, oh my God, what are they going to write? What are they going to think? How are they going to react? I carried like that for a very long time. But yeah, sorry, I totally turned into this session, but it's just interesting to me, like, just being in the space more and more with young people. But I think that comment alone, I hope, was a wake-up call, because that's a big response of what they do. And I think we need counselors in community 100%, but we also need to support people who are trying to enter those fields and welcome them back into community. But we also know it's very challenging for small communities because so much exists. I remember they talked about it in my program. They were like, oh my goodness, you're trying to separate your work life with your personal life, especially if you have family. How do you support people? But I was like, there's a lot of ways I think without just counseling to rely on in communities, we can do this. And I think this event, I hope, highlights a lot of examples, because they also talked about very specific things that would help them, that they think would be valuable. And it's like combining these mental health conversations around talking about addictions, or making very inclusive spaces more accessible outside of school. And supporting youth groups and initiatives that are happening. Like that youth group was like, my own self-government. Oh, I'm gonna get ranked for this. They're like, my own self-government is not here, and that's disappointing. And that's what they said out loud. And they addressed them specifically, and they were invited. They were invited very much so. That's hard. Like that's hard, because young people are saying and asking for these and asking for support. And I've heard it for years, because I'm more and more narrowing of like what I'm doing. And that's one reason why we formed the Western Arctic Youth Collective, was because I was recognizing with some other youth that there's so many gaps between things, and there's also not people working or commuting. And if they are, it's a very last resort. So how do you kind of just like get ahead of the ball and just say, hey, we have this initiative group, or we have these activities that are echoing what you want. But yeah, I could talk all day about coping. I think coping is very hard. I'm someone who still struggles with coping in good ways, because I will share, like I work a lot. I'm a very busy person. And sometimes my sleep and eating schedule is like all over the place on the basic things that I know is important. Sometimes I delay reaching out for like help, or I take it upon myself and just sacrifice like little things of myself to do it. That's not okay. Trying to do that, trying to be better, and just trying to support the team. And then just be present with my family. My daughter's now very vocal of when she wants me to turn my phone off, when she wants my computer off. She's only 21 years old, and she's telling me to stop. So it's me being like, okay, mom's on too much. So it's just learning that. And then it's modeling it to other family members, and like, especially younger family members. Like, it's okay to speak about this. It's okay to say things. It's okay to ask for help. So just normalizing that in our communities is so important. And yeah, looking for other help. I still experience depression. I get anxiety all the time. I very much so. I think it was a whole new world when I had postpartum. I even had like that depression when you were pregnant, where like just it was eye-opening. Like I didn't know until it was really done, where I was like, oh, I'm off more than I understand. But if anybody would like to share a bit more on coping, healthy or unhealthy, or just what they think would help folks cope in better ways, I always invite conversations like that. Or I could step into emotional mapping. And you can't laugh at my stick person if you opened the link already. I'm not an artist. But yeah, if anyone else would like to share, this is a safe space.
Would you mind, Alyssa, if I just said a few things because what you're saying and then what I was presenting, and I think what you're saying is so important, and really appreciate you sharing, because I think you're highlighting some of the things I was trying to get at, which is, there's a foundation for coping, but absolutely, if people are, struggling with their mental health, that also needs addressed. And the ways that gets addressed, I think you guys are advocating for some really important changes to the way that those things get addressed. I think that's so important. And you basically articulated what we call and you guys probably heard this phrase, but a trauma-informed approach to coping. Just recognizing that people are at their own stage, and you're going to hear all kinds of things and all kinds of, you mentioned cutting, substance use, People have different ways of coping, and they're doing the best that they can at that time. And it is possible to validate people's feelings. Like, obviously you're overwhelmed and this is the best way that you know to cope, while also exploring other ways of, what about trying this, and finding out from them what's meaningful to them. So you articulated that so beautifully in your example. So I just wanted to call attention. And then Charla.
Merci for that. I was just wanting to speak a little bit on trauma-informed and resilience with the team that I'm currently working with now through EC&E for the government. And yes, Alyssa, the comments that were made yesterday, I just really hope that that's going to open some more discussion, because as you know, or maybe you don't know, the GNWT has put a lot of effort into this new team under the Student Wellness Division with child and youth care counselors for schools across the Northwest Territories. And, I think we're gonna have to re-look at how those supports are put in our school and how they work with the community. So one of the presentations that I'm really proud to be a part of, one of the initiatives, is we do a trauma-informed approach to education. And within that is obviously trauma-informed, but the foundation of two-eyed seeing approach, with really incorporating and respecting and founding the practice on Indigenous knowledge and Indigenous wellness. And I think that really speaks to just Indigenous communities and how that connection piece is the foundation. And it's such a complex thing now when we look at, our colonial history and the fact that our system is still so ingrained in the Western way. But these kind of conversations, I think, are so important. And although it's really complex, it just shows the need. And I know you've said this before, Alyssa, and it was said yesterday too, that, our people, not just our youth, our people are starving for those cultural practices. And as, an educator, someone who has had a lot of schooling within the Western, the Western world, I'm really working hard to take down those barriers. Not saying that it's totally bad, but that's where that two-eyed seeing comes into play, because it balances each other out. And I think these informal discussions where people are just valued for what they have to say. And that was one of the things I really loved yesterday with the youth on the panel was, I know them through school, and I have the privilege of knowing them through school, and the way they supported each other up there was just something natural. And and they all had such important things to say, and like that is what we want, our youth to have that voice and that platform to just be open and honest in whatever they say. Like I think one of the comments too was made that a lot of times with youth programming, and as a teacher, that was my job, is what is the outcome? How am I going to get the students to think this or get this? And I'm really learning, just even in my own journey, of just taking down all of that and just being part of the process. And that's where, for me, like the wellness and the lessons come out is just part of that process, as opposed to saying at the end of this conference or whatever, we want A, B, and C. So I'm really hoping that this type of speaking and sharing with each other, I think it is part of wellness, and I hope I'm making sense. But I think that two-eyed perspective of, just really valuing what has worked for our people for so long, and just reclaiming that, but figuring out what does that look like in a school that is still very much based on Western foundation, or the counseling aspect. I know when I was in my counseling program, it didn't fit what I believed in, because when they were talking about ethics and, you know, how you shouldn't be a part of the community, like that made no sense. I would be suffering with my own wellness if I wasn't part of my community. And also that stigma around a lot of our mental health, you know, like it can't be compartmentalized like that. And I think our wellness, whatever that might look like for people, has to be ingrained in the community. And, you know, one of the big, I remember when I was in junior high and high school, there was the quote coined from the Tweet Show, which was really inspiring to me, when we talk about be as strong as two people, you know, and that was very much put on Indigenous students, that you had to walk in two worlds, which is very true. But I think now we need to be saying that to our non-Indigenous people around the table, that you also need to be as strong as two people, and you need to learn the Indigenous ways and value that and celebrate it. But that's where I'm really feeling passionate about bringing that into this new role that I have. And it is difficult to work within government at times, because not a lot of people are open to hearing it, but that's something I'm really trying to work hard on to, you know, support what those youth said yesterday, because that makes so much sense. And I'm going to stop talking and Masi.
Messy, thank you. So much more we could talk about this. I wish I booked it more than an hour. But that's a question from the group, and I agree. What is another term for resilience? It's getting used too much in a response to overcoming and going through trauma. And what I've seen some youth share in the past on that is, they're like, you're saying I need to go through this to be a strong and capable individual. I need to experience these harm and traumatic experiences. Where that perception in place, especially on Indigenous people, exists. So what is another term for resilience that could be adapted? Like, those are some really interesting ideas I think our group can really help build upon in some way. Yeah, does anyone have any ideas? Does the crowd have any ideas?
Crowdsourcing. I really love what you said and shared, Charla, and really appreciate it. Yeah. I don't know, maybe there is a term, a shared term that you guys could come up with. It doesn't have to be one, like it could be a term that has meaning in your community context. Because I agree, it is highly problematic. It puts so much emphasis on the individual, and usually on the individual who's been through so much. We need a different term. And once you know it, let me know so I can share it. Because this happens, this is widespread, this challenge.
Something to keep thinking about. And yeah, I kind of echoed of what you were talking about, Charlotte. I remember in social work class, and they were talking about ethics to me, and I didn't do well in that class because I had a lot of problems with being like, I was raised with 100 people. I was like, and I'm someone who would love to go home and like work there in that capacity, but even in Nunavik is a very small place. Our interactions, our families, our sense of community is very much there. And I remember I always encourage people who work and go to the north, you need to experience that sense of community. You need to go to the feasts, the drum dance, the festivals and jamborees. Those are like things that our community inspire to. Yeah, and they need to do it. They need to do that. And there's a lot of unpacking that folks who come to our communities, so much of good intentions, I think, is there, but there's also take, or things that could be another conversation. But it's, I remember when you told that, I got chills because I was like, I debated with my teacher, and she taught at our college, and she's lived in the North her whole life, but not her whole life, for like her career life. And I remember butting heads with her, and I didn't do well on certain aspects of ethics, because I would say, if I'm going to be a social worker, I'm going to be going into community, I'm going to be doing programming that I think is very valuable, or being in these spaces. I will share publicly. That's probably why I don't work for government. There's reasons for that. I'm in the grassroots nonprofit sector because they can be flexible and accommodating and responsive and quickly. Not as much red tape that exists. It's more yellow. But it's just, it's so, yeah. And I hope when I go to my master's program that I feel like even just on the interview they did with me, it's the way they ask things and the intentions of wanting to be involved, and like asking of like, okay, what is you being involved in the program? How are you going to go and do that of what you're saying in a good way? Tied to understanding the Western and the Indigenous lens, and just incorporating that within wellness programming and diversifying that. So,
Just curious, have you guys come across Lisa Boivin's work? She's Dene. She's a good friend of mine. I'm going to type her name in the chat. And she's written 2 books now. They're sort of sold as children's books, but they're not. They're for adults as well. And her whole area of research is around ethics and consent in the medical world, but what it means to be Dene, and to come from her multiple members of her family were medicine people, and she herself has that gift, and she does her work through image-based storytelling. And her last book was about the death of her brother, and her current book is about death of a family member in ICU. But it's got so many teachings, and she takes these questions, and she's in the rehabilitation science program at U of T.
Cool.
As an academic, so she is constantly strongest to people.
I feel like I've seen her name in papers. I will say Allison too. Now that I think about it, I feel like I've seen your name in some papers I've referenced and read over the years too.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I was like, wait, no, her name seems familiar, but I've seen the cover of the book. It's called I Will See You Again.
Yes.
Yeah. And the new one, that's cool. I'll have to look it up. We're talk for our book and library and stuff right now.
She's amazing.
Cool. Well, we're coming up to 10 o'clock here. I had emotional mapping. We can skip that because I think this was such an insightful conversation. But what I want to end with is I have a guided meditation that's really quickly done with Jenny Vandermeer, for folks who know her from Saw 2. She wanted to be here, but she's actually in a land-based setting focused on wellness with like a bunch of other amazing people right now. So she was like in full regrets that she couldn't be here, but she pre-recorded these all during COVID. She was doing like yoga sessions, she was doing meditation, she was doing a range of things. And I would love to just play it for everyone. It's only a few minutes long. Yeah. Oh, it says 17 minutes plus 5 minutes. Just a second, let's go to the 5-minute mark. So if you could pass me hosting again, and then I can play it and share it. And then we can end this conversation that I feel like we've started somewhere. It's not going anywhere. All right.
Everything the world's offering you. I've been doing palms down a lot lately because I really need some grounding. So we're going to do 5 minutes of meditation. Closing
You pass me hosting, Allison?
Exhaling through your nose. And we're going to start now. So inhaling for 4, 3, 2, 1. Holding for 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhaling for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhaling for 4, 3, 2, 1. Holding for 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhaling for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhaling for 4, 3, 2, 1. Holding for 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhaling for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhaling for 4, 3, 2, 1. Holding for 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhaling for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhaling for 4, 3, 2, 1. Holding for 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhaling for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhaling for 4, 3, 2, 1. Holding for 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhaling for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Inhaling for 4, 3, 2, 1. Holding for 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Exhaling for 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. And continue your counting on your own. We'll let you know when we're done. Your last cycle of breath, your last exhale of 8. Keeping your eyes closed. Joining us when you're ready with your palms together at your chest, your eyes still closed. Remember to keep it straight, your head slightly bowed. Inhale, deep breath. Exhale through your mouth, making as loud of a noise as you can. We'll do that 2 more times. Exhale through the mouth. Inhale through the nose 1 more time. Exhale through the mouth. Keeping your eyes closed, and back to your breath. Releasing your hands back down to your knees. And slowly open your eyes. That's just one style of meditation. There's all kinds of different you can do. And I suggest you do it in the morning, first thing. And the reason I say this is especially, it looks like there's a lot of women on the call. I think we're all women, yeah. And
I was gonna stop that now, but yeah, Jenny wanted to just offer that. She also has, like, if you Google her on YouTube, she has like restorative stuff and some other things. And if you follow her on Insta, she's super just really helpful, understanding, and just trying to really encourage and share that with others. But yeah, she always tells me, she's like, do it in the morning, and I'm like, I'm not a morning person.
It
But yeah.
was incredible. Wow.
Yeah, she's pretty good. I missed the spot to start, but it's okay. We made it work. But yeah, thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. We're gonna close, and we have our second last session at 11:30. We've got 4 youth who are going to talk about wellness from their perspectives. 2 of them are international youth as well. I feel like one of them's like 8-9 hours ahead, so he's joining us. But yeah.
Is that Johan?
Yeah.
Oh, so nice.
Yeah.
Oh, that's so nice.
Yeah, he did one of the videos. So
yeah, with Melody. Yeah. No, so
we were
cool.
going to show his video, and then we were going to show a Greenlandic video, and then one regional one with it too. So 11:30, join in. Have a good break. If that meditation felt good, I would continue to do a few little breaths for yourself, or go get some fresh air, all that beautiful stuff. So thank you, everybody. Bye.
Thank you, guys. Masito, very nice to see you and spend some time with you.
Likewise.
Take care.